Hello, Sumit. How are you?
Hello, ma'am. I am fine. What about you?
I'm also fine. Uh, Tell me about yourself.
My name is Sumit Patil from Barchi. Uh, I have completed civil engineering from Pune University. I have 2 years experience as a front-end developer. In that 2 years, I am working last 1 year Angular developer. My skill set are HTML, HTML5, CSS, CS3, Bootstrap, as well as Angular, TypeScript, and later knowledge of Node.js and Express.js.
Okay. How much will you rate yourself within the range of 1 to 5 for Angular as well as JavaScript?
In JavaScript, firstly, I out of 5, 4, and in Angular, out of 5, 3.
Okay. We will start first with JavaScript. Can you tell
Yes,
me what is hosting in JavaScript?
okay. Hosting, all the declaration are get shifted top of the scope. Only declaration are shifted, not a value.
Okay. What is the difference between call by value and call by reference?
Call by value and call by reference. Okay. Can you explain one example? Share
One
screen.
is primitive and non-primitive difference.
Okay. Yes. So there primitive. There are two data types: primitive and non-primitive. Primitive data types number, boolean, undefined, string, as well as big int and symbol. And non-primitive data types, object, function, array. Primitive data type holds value, and non-primitive data type holds reference.
Okay. What is the difference between equal to as well as strictly equal?
Okay. To as well as strictly. When we use a double equal to, then only check a value, not a check a data type. And triple equal to change check a value as well as data type. That means in double equal to, one is a string 2 and another is a number data type. Then result is true, but strictly equal to result is false.
Okay. What is mean by scope and how many types of it?
A scope.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The accessibility and availability of any declaration is called the functional scope, and another is a block scope. Functional scope, variable we have, then create a functional scope. And when we create use a block scope inside of a where let and const. Inside of a functional as well as block scope, outside of a function variables.
Okay. What is mean by DOM?
DOM means document. DOM stands for document object model. Using DOM, we manipulate data on the HTML page. There are mainly two types of selection: single selection method, multiple selection method. Document dot get element by the document dot query selector, and in multiple selection document dot class names as well as tags names, and last one is query selector all. Now, by idea and query selector return a single DOM object. Query
Okay.
selector are text name and multiple multiple data. That means query selector class name as well as text name return a HTML collection, and query selector are returns a node list. HTML collection is a array-like structure, but does not all property apply on array. Only for loop and length property, and node list return. Node list is a array-like structure. One property extra add. Okay, that's a DOM.
Okay. Do you know ES6?
Yes, ES6 introduced in 2015. In ES6, new features add like late const, promise, as well as destructuring array, destructuring object, spread operator, rest operator, and that's like.
Okay. What is the difference between late, var, and const?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, late were constant difference based on maybe 4 or 5 points. First difference based on late redeclaration and reassign in same scope. In where redeclaration as well as reassign is possible, but in later we can only reassign possible, not a redeclaration, and const not a redeclaration as well as reassign possible. But we try for late and const redeclaration is not possible, but we try redeclaration, then get a error, syntax error. Second difference based on hosting. Generally, since hosting is possible only where, but where as well as late and cost possible hosting. But when we check before initialize for where, result get undefined, and for late and const result get cannot access before initialize. This is a reference here. Third difference based on block scope. Where does not create a block scope. Where is only global scope or a functional scope, but late and const create a block scope. And where introduced where is already existing in JavaScript, but late and const introduced in ES6 2015. In one point add possible, but when we try reassign for const, then get a okay.
Hello, hi. Yes, yes. Voice is breaking. That's it. What is mean by closure?
Closure.
Yes.
I'm audible, ma'am.
Sometimes your voice is breaking.
Okay.
Yes.
Closure means when we create an inner function inside of a, when we create an outer function inside of an inner function, then firstly create a lexical scope. This lexical scope cannot access outside of a function, but we use a closure, then access a outside of a function. That means outside of a function we firstly call, and another outside function return an inner function definition, and again inner function we call, then get a access a data. Uh, can you share one example?
Okay, no problem. You can share your screen.
Okay. some issue. Okay, so a simple example. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What is mean by isNaN?
Isn't is a function when we pass any value. If a value is a number, then return a false. And if a value is other without number, then return is a true.
Okay. What is the difference between map and 3D?
Okay, map is when we same functionality on same on same elements, then we use a map. And reduce is addition as well as subtraction, multiplication, and add extra behavior of elements, then we use the reduce. Map method returns same length, original length, as well as after return array, length is always same.
Okay. What is mean by pure function?
Okay. Pure function is based on three conditions. Firstly is inside a pure function, we return keyword is must. Second is uh, function inside of a function does not data depends on outside of a function. And third one is when we pass any value, then always the same data get a data does not change. That is pure function.
Okay. What is mean by promise in JavaScript?
Okay, promise is a uh, promise is a 1 minute. Madam. Promise is a JavaScript object which give some information in future. There are four types of promises. States. First is pending. Second is resolve. Third is reject, and last one is all settled. Pending means our promise is not resolved and rejected. Resolve means our promise is success and get a data. Reject means our promise is failed and get a status. Why? That means reason why a promise is rejected. And last one is settled. Either promise is resolved and rejected. Actually, promise handle a synchronous operation in JavaScript. 1 minute, man. I add in ID in.
Okay.
There are function inner function get access a data outside of a function, change behavior. This is a closure example.
Okay. What is the difference between local storage and system storage?
Okay. Actually, local storage and session storage are web storage part, and web session storage data is limited time. That means user close a tab or a close a machine, data are removed. And local storage data are permanently uh, stored data. When we remove data or manually removed, then method is local storage dot remove item data. That's the difference.
Okay. When we use prevent default method,
Okay, prevent default method. Sorry, ma'am.
when we use prevent default in JavaScript.
Okay. Uh, in form inside of a form behavior is refresh. Then we avoid refresh data. Then we use a prevent default. I am not sure actually.
Okay. What is async await and why we use?
Async await is synthetically sugarcoating over promises. Uh, actually, this returns a promise. But why you use? Actually, in JavaScript, we handle a synchronous function by XHR callback function. But inside of callback function, multiple asynchronous function, then create a nesting functions. That means pyramid of doom. That also called a callback hill. That this avoid we use a promise. But same issue inside of promise because multiple asynchronous function create when we consume dot then method multiple times, then create a promise chain. This promise chaining debugging and read a code very difficult. Debugging because when compile a JavaScript, dot then chaining is a one line. That reason debugging very difficult. This avoid promise chaining. We use a async await.
Okay. Uh, what is mean by memoization?
Sorry, ma'am. What is?
Memoization.
Sorry, ma'am. I don't know.
Okay. Do you know event bubbling and event capturing?
Yes, ma'am. Can share one example? Explain.
Okay.
Actually, in event bubbling, flow is child to parent, and in event capturing, flow is a parent to child. Inside of there are three elements, three class: grandparent, parent, and child. There, when we click a button, add button, then flow first time child, parent, and grandparent. Okay, say I don't take a ID. Hello, ma'am.
Ah, yes.
Uh, when we click add button, flow is child, parent, and is a event bubbling example, and we change behavior of event bubbling. Then we use by default value is false. We change a value and flow is child, parent to child. Sorry. Hello, ma'am.
Hello. Yes.
I'm
I think
audible.
you should have to take it outside the object. It is the
What, ma'am?
third parameter to means outside
Third
the
parameter.
object.
Third parameter is false.
No, no, I think true is outside the
Yes, yes,
curly
yes,
braces.
yes, yes, yes. Yes, ma'am. Grandparent, parent, child.
Okay. We will start with Angular.
Okay,
Can you
ma'am.
tell me the difference between Angular and Angular JS?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, in Angular JS is a old version, and Angular is a latest version, and Angular updated every 6 months. In Angular JS, we cannot use a CLI. In Angular, use a CLI. Angular JS does not support a mobile browser. Angular also support a mobile browser. Main difference is Angular JS only support JavaScript, but Angular is supported JavaScript as well as TypeScript. That's the difference in Angular JS and Angular.
Okay. What is mean by component?
Sorry, ma'am.
What is mean by component?
Component. Okay.
Yes.
Component is a most basic UI building block. When we create when we create any Angular application, inside of one component already exists. That is a app component. In app component, four files. One is HTML file, second is SAS file, third is testing file, and one is TypeScript file. In HTML file, we use a code on HTMLs, and TypeScript file, we use a all logic inside of a TypeScript file. Inside of a TypeScript file, we use various methods like ng1 changes, ng1 unit, uh, that is it hooks, and as well as constructor. In app component, this component is a register in um, app module.ts, and also register in TypeScript file. One is a component decorator, and this is a selector one, app root. This app root selector must register inside of a index.html. This is a responsible on show on UI. That's a component. We create a custom component. Every component directly or indirectly depends on app component.
Okay. What is mean by decorators and its types?
Okay. Okay. Decorator is a group of component. Actually, decorators is a property functions and method. There are types is a ng model, injectable, uh, input decorator, output decorator, view children decorator, view child decorator.
Okay. What are the types of directives we have?
Okay. Actually, actually directive is a add additional behavior of HTML element. There are basically three types of directive. First is a structure directive, second is attribute directive, and third is a component directive. Structure directive, attribute, and component. In structured directive is a add additional adding and removing element on a particular condition. Inside of a structure directive, three main type: ng if, ng for, and ng switch. Ng if is a conditionally based. If condition is true, then this particular element goes on show on DOM as well as UI. And when condition is false, this is not render inside of a browser. If ng if condition other is when we change a condition, ng if we use a negation sign as well as we use a ng template. Another is a ng for. Ng for we use a object iterable things like object string, sorry, string not object and array. And third one is ng switch. Ng switch is a combination of ng switch case and ng switch default. This directive also useful in conditionally based true or false. Another directive is a attribute directive. Attribute directive inside of a ng class and ng style. Ng class when elements we use a conditionally class add, then we use a ng class, and when we use style on conditionally, then we use a ng style. And last one is a component directive. Component directive is the most important directive. Actually, this directive responsible on show data. And structure directive always start with star and structure directive, my attribute directive inside of a ng class, ng style, square bracket. That's a type of directive.
What is data binding in Angular?
Okay. Actually, data binding means communicate between two files, HTML file to TypeScript file as well as TypeScript file to HTML file. Basically, two types of data binding: input data binding and output data binding. Input data binding means we send a data HTML to TypeScript. This is the input data binding, and we pass output to TypeScript to HTML. Then we use a output data binding. And when we this input and output also called as one-way data binding. And when we use HTML to TypeScript as well as TypeScript to HTML at one time, then we use a ng model data binding. Firstly, structural data binding input. Actually, when we pass a TypeScript to HTML file, there are two data binding: structured string interpolation and property binding. String interpolation, we use a double curly bracket inside of a we take a filter on inside of a TypeScript file, and also we use a property binding. String interpolation is a string interpolation and property bindings difference is minor difference. Property binding does only use as string interpolation does not use Boolean value, and property binding also uses Boolean value. When we pass a HTML file to TypeScript file, then we use a event binding. Event binding is based on particular event. When event and another is callback function. Callback function defined inside of a TypeScript file, and all logic inside of this callback function. When this event trigger, then inside of a TypeScript functionality render. Another is ng model. This is a two-way data binding. Actually, this ng model binding useful inside of a form. ng model comes forms model.
What is async pipe?
Async pipe. Actually, inside of a Angular, async is a pipe observable when we get a data using observable. Then first we subscribe, and after emit a data inside of a ng install, we use the we unsubscribe. That this is a lengthy process, and this avoid to use a async pipe. Does not need a unsubscribe. Actually, but async pipe is a impure pipe because then we use a async pipe bad performance on Angular application.
What is view encapsulation?
Okay, view encapsulation.
Yes.
Okay, actually, view encapsulation is based on a style. When view encapsulation actually style based, there are three types, three conditions: shadow DOM, and another two is I am not understand at that time.
Okay. What is the difference between promise and observation?
Okay, promise is a eagerly loading, and observable is a lazy loading. When get a data in a promise from promise, we use a consume dot then method we use, and inside of observable we subscribe. Actually, promise okay, promise is not cancelable, but observable are also cancelable. Using ng on destroy method, we unsubscribe.
What are the life cycle hooks in Angular?
Okay, life cycle hooks in any component creation and destruction goes to various stages. Actually, this stages is called life cycle. Actually, constructor is not a part of life cycle hook. In life cycle hook, 8 methods. All methods are start with ng character, and if implement in inside of a TypeScript file, we firstly implements their interfaces. First lifecycle hook is ng on changes. ng on changes detect changes input decorators. Another is a ng on unit. Inside of a ng on unit, we call API functionality as well as observable functionality. Third one is ng2 check, and fourth is after ng after content init. Next one is ng after content checked. Next ng after view init, and ng after you check, and last one is ng on destroy. Actually, ng on destroy is the most important part of life cycle loop. When we any code inside of a TypeScript file, when we goes to another component, that means this component, particular component is destroyed. At that time, all subscription are uh, unsubscribed inside of a hook. Life cycle hook ng on destroy methods.
Which life cycle have you used the most?
Which life cycle hook use? But
Most of the time,
okay,
which you have used?
first is ng on it, most of times use, and ng on destroy, and ng on changes also we use, and sometimes ng2 checkings. This for life cycle important.
What is routing in Angular?
Okay, routing is nothing but when we user goes to one component to another component. That's routing. Routing configure inside of a app dot routing file, app dot routing dot ts file, and on app dot html we select define a router outlet.
Okay. And do you know the difference between reactive form and template driven form?
Okay, template driven from suppose you in our application functionality is the functionality does not complex. That time we use a template driven form. Template driven forms comes a forms model, and reactive forms when we use a complex functionality is a complex. That time we use a reactive forms model. Reactive forms model comes with a common reactive. Okay.
Suppose I have Angular class and I want to give it a behavior as like a service. Which decorator do you use?
Angular, suppose, please repeat question.
I want to convert Angular class, means TypeScript class, into any service. Which decorator do you use?
Actually, when we pass a data, input decorator, uh, input decorator we use. Parent to child.
No, means I have a TypeScript class, normal class, and I want to make that class as a service.
Sorry, ma'am, I don't know.
Okay, no problem. What are the routing hooks?
Routing we used.
Routing hooks.
Okay, routing hook. Routing hooks are router link. Router link inside of a HTML file we use. Router link navigate. Router link communicate sender information route app.routing.ts.
No, routing hooks means can activate, can deactivate.
Okay, yes, sorry. Okay, routing hooks can activate, can deactivate, can activate child, and to add in Angular 15.
What is the difference between constructor and ng on it? And suppose means why we write any code in ng on it rather than in constructor?
Okay. In constructor and can I mean video stop because light are gone.
Okay.
Constructor and ng unit difference is a constructor first of all uh, before ng on unit. Can I explain one code?
Okay. No problem. You can take.
What, ma'am?
You can tell me. Miss.
Okay.
Don't write code.
Okay. When we write one component, suppose child component, and child component defined inside of .html. In app.ts file, we send a data for child component, and in app.html we get one button, and this data transfer in child input decorator, and
No, I am asking about you constructor and ng on unit. The difference between them.
okay, constructor first call ng before call ng on unit.
Okay, then why we write a code in type in ng on unit?
Actually, constructor ng on unit is a life cycle hook, and ng on unit only one times initialize. That's the difference.
Constructor initialize one time, ng on unit initialize every time when component get initialized or rendered in browser.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes. What is in by lazy loading?
Okay, lazy loading is actually our Angular application are inside of various modules, and modules are eagerly loading. That means particular module does not need that time automatic loaded. That reason Angular application performance are bad. This behavior we change, that is lazy loading.
Can you
Lazy
show me
load.
the example?
Yes, ma'am. I create one module. This is a eagerly loading by default behavior. Okay, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah, okay.
First, any model is eagerly loading when actually at that time. Okay. First, eagerly loading, and another component is a lazy model. Lazy component does not load. When user goes on lazy component, when user click lazy navbar inside of li, then lazy model downloaded. That's a lazy model. We check inside of
Okay, no problem. What do you mean by cache system in Angular?
cache data.
Yes.
Actually, cache data is a some observable in Angular application is a host multiple components, and we use one particular API. In API, multiple times we use inside of a component. That means we subscribe more times one API. This avoid a thing we use a cache data. When we use a cache data, only one time we get a data uh, using create a one service, and this service inside of a service write a code cache data.
Okay. What is the difference between subject, behavior subject, and replace subject?
Replace subject I don't know, but subject and behavior subject is observable as well as observer. That means emitter data and subscriber data. Subject by default no any get a data. That means no any get argument, and subject another is behavior subject mandatory one argument.
Okay. When we use intersectors,
Okay. Interceptor at that time we use when we call API call and send data on local storage. That time all functionality inside of a interceptor. This is a one instance, singleton instance.
okay. What is HTTP client?
HTTP client is a class inside of a comes inside of a HTTP common HTTP Angular core. When any we call a API call, at that time use HTTP client inside of HTTP various method like a get, post, as well as and delete. That's the step client.
Okay. What is the wildcard?
Wildcard.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, inside of Angular, wildcard is a concept of routing. Inside of a routing, when multiple multiple paths, but when user click a particular path, does not navigate correct component. At that time, we navigate one manually. We create a component. That time we use a wildcard. Wildcard inside of a path double star.
Okay. I'm sharing the API. Can you get make the API call for this API?
Okay. Actually, I am not create any services. I call direct TypeScript TS file FTS.
Okay, no problem. You can do it.
Okay, ma'am. Where
Okay.
is 10 object?
Show first see means name, username, and email on UI.
Name, username, email.
Yes.
Okay, I will try.
Okay, take only 4.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have completed from my side. Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.
Same to you.
Bye.